Hey, what's up? Jimmy Smith here for my Darren Till versus Robert Whittaker preview. Yeah, I didn't do one for Deiveson Figueiredo versus Joseph Benavidez because it was just a busy week with all the fights, and I just did not have time to do it. My thoughts on it, I thought Figueiredo was going to win. I didn't think it would be that dominant. I thought he would be dominant. I didn't think he'd be that dominant. I mean, that's one of the most dominant rounds I've ever seen in a championship fight. Because it was just long enough that it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a one-shot knockout. It wasn't a quick submission. But it was short enough that we know who the better fighter is. End of story. The problem now is Deiveson Figueiredo, once again, being a dominant champion at 125, finding enough challengers for him. And Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest of all time, and Cejudo taking over after him. You need to build up the division, not just the champion. So we'll see how that works. But hats off to him. It's an amazing performance. Now, let's get back to Whittaker versus Till. Alex Oliveira, Peter Sobotta at the bottom of the main card. Alex Oliveira, extremely experienced. He's fought a ton of names. He's been around the game forever. Very exciting fighter. Always love watching him fight. I think we're to the point where the experience is starting to wear on him. He's had too many fights. It's now become a negative. He's lost 3 out of his last 4 fights, of course, coming off a win over Max Griffin. But look at the names that beat him. Nicholas Dalby, Mike Perry, Gunnar Nelson. Solid guys. No huge names, no contenders. Mike Perry, of course, tough at 170, but pretty much a stand-and-bang brawler. The issue with Alex Oliveira is part of what makes him so exciting is also one of his weaknesses. He tends to fight wild and loose, and he's not a gigantic 170-pounder. So when it comes to guys who are willing to stand in the pocket and throw big punches, he doesn't have the firepower to really play that kind of game. He has probably a superior submission game over Peter Sobotta, but I don't think he has the size to really get it there. We saw against Carlos Condit, his guillotine can be tricky. Sobotta, if he's smart, stays out of those clinch positions. If you saw his fight against Ben Saunders, Sobotta can put you down with a shot. Real power, good knees, good versatility, good sense of range, just a heavy-handed guy. Now, coming off a loss to Leon Edwards is a slick, accurate, versatile counterpuncher, and I don't see Alex Oliveira being able to implement that kind of game plan. He's more of a stand in front. He throws a lot of kicks. He's a bit unorthodox, but I think that leaves him vulnerable to a lot of power punches. I think Sobotta gets it done probably by knockout, probably in round 2, maybe early round 3. But I think it's one of those cases of the veteran name has just been a veteran too long. He's starting to lose the blade on his knife, starting to wear down a little bit. So I go Peter Sobotta, second round, third round knockout. Alex Craig versus Antigulov. Paul Craig is an anomaly. He's 6'4". He is huge for this weight class, and he tends to get it done by submission. 12 wins, never gone the distance in victory, 11 submissions. That's weird for a guy his size. Usually guys his build and his size are stand-up bangers. Of course, he has 1 knockout on his resume. So what this boils down to me is Antigulov is coming off 2 losses in the UFC. He's 2-2 in his career on a 2-fight skid, 5'11". Paul Craig 6'4". He doesn't have the power to win a slugfest with Paul Craig, and definitely isn't going to win a jiu-jitsu match. And I don't see him having that veteran savvy and confidence to maybe wear Paul Craig down, have the right game plan. Paul Craig, of course, a draw last time against Shogun. Shogun was a veteran, very hard to finish, very hard to keep position on. And he had just enough veteran savvy to keep the fight neutral. I don't think Antigulov has that. Also, 2 losses are on the UFC. He's only 2-2. Not a ton of confidence going in. I think Paul Craig gets it done probably by submission, I would say late round 1. Because he's big enough to knock him out, and he's the superior technician when it comes to the ground game. So I would say Paul Craig probably gets it done again by submission. Marina Rodriguez, Carlos Esparza. I really went back and forth a lot on this one. And I might go back and forth again. I don't know. Look, Marina Rodriguez, 12-0-2. I like her striking. I like her power. I like her versatility with her kickboxing. Got a draw with Cynthia Calvillo the last time out. Carlos Esparza, a former champ, has fought better names, higher fight IQ. Carlos Esparza, she's on a 3-fight win streak. I know a lot of people thought she lost to Michelle Waterson last time out. I just see her fighting a veteran fight, taking on an undefeated fighter who's has momentum and confidence and all those things. You want to make it boring. You want to make it a wrestle fest. You don't want to stand and trade with her. You don't want to make it about athleticism. You don't want to make it about the young fighter's gifts. I don't see Carla Esparza doing that. I see her mixing in her wrestling as much as humanly possible, making this a takedown game. I think it's probably boring. I think it's long, and I think Carla Esparza wins a decision. I think she fights smart, doesn't let Marina Rodriguez get her game going, and uses that championship savvy to make this a WrestleFest and win. So once again, I went back and forth a lot. I think Carla Esparza, although the veteran name, still has enough gas in the tank to maybe make a run at 115. So she plays it smart. And it's boring, but it's a win for Carla Esparza. Alexander Gustafsson, Fabricio Werdum. Now, I've been asked a lot about what Gustafsson is going to do at heavyweight. Whether or not he can be a factor at heavyweight and whether or not he beats Fabricio Werdum are two different questions. So, do I think he'll be a factor at heavyweight? Maybe. Look, the problem is the top four at heavyweight are DC. Let's Stipe Miocic, number one. DC, Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blades. I don't think he beats those guys, okay? Probably doesn't beat Volkov either. So he can make, the bottom half of the top 10. He can become 6 through 10. I think he can do that. That top is tough, really tough. And the skill set they have, I don't think he plays well against. Does he beat Fabricio Werdum? I think so. Fabricio Werdum, 42 years old, of course, a long layoff between fights last time because of a positive doping test, 2 years off. And he was coming off a knockout loss to Alexander Volkov. The interesting thing when I look at the Alexei Oleinik fight is this is a guy who had world-class jiu-jitsu and taking on a submission guy. I thought he would outwork him on the ground. And it ended up being a boxing match. And a guy in Alexei Oleinik who's not known for his hands outboxed him for 3 rounds. He looked sluggish. He looked slow. His timing was off. Didn't commit enough to the takedown when he wanted it. It was a flat performance from a former champion. I think we are. I know this has been a consistent theme in this one, but we're getting into that veteran name who's had a few too many fights. I think at 42, he just doesn't quite have the snap necessary to beat many elite guys at heavyweight. And I don't know how elite Gustafsson's going to be, but I think it may rejuvenate him for 1 or 2 fights. Remember, he's only 33 years old. What I don't like is somebody switching weight classes because they're not competitive anymore. There's a difference between I've conquered my weight class, I want a new challenge, and I've lost 2 in a row at 205, it's time to move weight classes. When you're getting pulled into something negatively, it's very different than getting pushed into something positively. Know what I'm saying? And I think that's where Alexander Gustafsson is right now. But I think it'll refresh him a little bit, not having to cut weight, being able to focus on power, and a faded Fabricio Werdum might be the perfect opponent for him right now. So I think he gets it done against Fabricio Werdum. Probably knocks him out. I think it probably looks like the Volkov fight a little bit, just because Gustafsson's tall, rangy, and does have real power. 205 should translate to heavyweight. I say he gets it done over Fabricio Werdum, probably by knockout, let's say round 3. And will he be a factor in the division? Depends on how you define factor. I don't think he breaks into the top 5. Mauricio Hua, Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, Little Nog. Guys, the first fight was an all-time classic in Pride. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's literally one of my favorite fights of all time. It was the original of this trilogy. Why is there a trilogy when one guy keeps winning? Answer me that. Mauricio Hua has won every time he's faced Little Nog. They fought twice, he's beat him twice. Neither fight was as good as the first one. I mean, the rematch wasn't as good as the first one. This one's not going to be as good as the first one. They're way past their prime. So my question is, why is this fight even happening? There's nothing I could tell you guys you don't already know about these guys. How am I going to break this down? Look, they're both faded. They're both, at one time, were top flight light heavyweights, based a lot for Little Nog on his submission game. Incredible jiu-jitsu, but decent hands as well. Mauricio Shogun Hua used to be an explosive knockout machine. Neither guy has been that guy for a while. Nogueira doesn't have the chin he used to. He used to take, some decent shots where he got in there and knocked you out. He doesn't have the cleanest boxing, which he used to have. Mauricio Shogun Hua isn't as explosive as he used to be. He can't leap across the cage with a flying knee like he used to. Hua probably gets it done because he's gotten it done twice before. And he's looked better than Nogueira recently. Not a ton better, but a little bit better. This is just a faded version of their previous fights. And Hua won both of those. When they fought in their prime, maybe I would see a rematch just because it would be fun because the first fight was so good. It's not going to match the first fight. So while this fight is playing, pause on ESPN and watch the first fight and then go back and watch the main event. That's my suggestion. I think Mauricio Hua gets it done probably by decision because he doesn't have the finishing power he used to. There you go. Robert Whittaker, Darren Till. So many ins and outs for this fight. These are two guys, too, coming off performances that I don't think are indicative of what they have at middleweight. Darren Till, when you look at the Kelvin Gastelum fight, looked scared in that first round. He didn't want to initiate, And, later on, he said he was going through all his mental stuff. He was terrified going into the fight. It showed. He looked shell-shocked. He looked like he didn't want to engage. He counterpunched a lot. Gastelum just wasn't aggressive enough. He didn't really warm up until round 2. That's when Till started taking over. But I don't think he fights that way against Robert Whittaker. I think that, restored him a little bit mentally getting that win. Remember, coming off a really terrible performance, couple of terrible performances at 170, which is why he pushed up to 185. But obviously, Jorge Masvidal, Tyron Woodley both finished him. He goes up to 185, and I think he was just like, oh my God, my career's on the line, and the pressure got to him. I don't think that happens this time. Fundamentally and tactically, he's an excellent stand-up striker. Big at middleweight. I don't think he's small for the division. Has real power. Has an excellent jab for a southpaw. If you're a boxing fan, most boxers who are southpaws don't have great jabs. Winky Wright had a good one. Michael Moore, former heavyweight champion with southpaw, he had an excellent jab. Usually they don't have great jabs. Darren Till really has a good jab when he stays behind it. It really sets up the rest of his offense. He needs to use that against Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, of course, versatile, explosive, power at 185, a former champion, great game plans, great fight IQ. Yoel Romero was a guy nobody wanted to fight, and he beat him twice. He just ran into one of the greatest counter-strikers in the division. The greatest counter-striker in the division. One of the greatest counter-strikers of all time in Israel Adesanya. Not an all-time great yet, hasn't been around that long. But a great counter-striker. And the last time he fought, he almost ran. No, not almost. He did run at Adesanya a few times, just barreling forward. I was like, what are you doing? Adesanya got his timing and knocked him out. He was recklessly aggressive against a great counter-striker. I don't think he does that this time. I think the pressure is starting to get to him as well. So these are two guys I think needed some time off. They needed to reassess their love for the sport and get back into it. And so I don't see Robert Whittaker fighting like he did against Adesanya. I don't think Darren Till fights like he did against Kelvin Gastelum. Darren Till, if he's smart, stays behind the jab, tries to get in boxing range, make this a close range fight. Robert Whittaker, really explosive from the outside. Good kicks, good leaping shots, good leaping hooks, good knees. He can hurt you when you think you're safe. That's always been his key. Darren Till is better at getting inside and hurting you right when he's in front of you. So I got to go with Robert Whittaker. He's got it done against better talent in a close fight, which I think this will be. I usually go with a guy who can do more. Robert Whittaker can do more. Darren Till throws the occasional leg kick, does have the occasional spinning attack. Robert Whittaker can do a lot with his legs. Very accurate with his kicks, good with his knees, good in the clinch. I think Robert Whittaker can do more. Therefore, I think he wins against Darren Till. Probably a decision, maybe a late finish. The X factor is both guys have been very honest and upfront about their mental battles. The one who doesn't have that solved is in deep trouble because you need 100% focus against an opponent like this. I think both guys do have it solved, and I think it'll be a good performance by both of them. I see Robert Whittaker getting back on track because of his ability to kind of surprise Darren Till from the outside. Darren Till doesn't pull a lot of surprises. He jabs, gets in, and throws very good combinations, and has real power behind everything he throws, but you don't wonder where it's coming from. I think Robert Whittaker, a lot of times against Yoel Romero, he caught him napping. Yoel Romero would take those breaks, and then boom, Whittaker was just on him with power shots, and he wasn't quite ready for it. I see a similar thing happening against Darren Till. As soon as Darren Till relaxes, and he does like to attack with his chin high and his hands floating a little bit. I think Darren Till will be floating and kind of waiting, and then bang, Robert could be on him before he realizes it. That's probably how I see this fight going. So Robert Whittaker by decision or late finish, and I'll be back afterward to own all my picks. I'll be calling Titan FC. Thursday. So check it out if you can on UFC Fight Pass. We're doing play-by-play with that with Jose Shorty Torres. So enjoy, and I'll see you guys after the fights.